Money Radio, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to welcome Laura Bramnick from TalkRealEstateAZ.com. TalkRealEstateAZ.com. Laura is an attorney specializing in real estate, also a real estate agent. Her phone number 480-624-2705. 480-624-2705. And you answer your own phone.
I answer my own phone.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Sinclair.
That's important.
Yeah, a client can get a hold of me if they need to.
That's very important. You help in residential, commercial, and land transactions. But there are a variety of different types of listings for real estate, aren't there?
Yeah, there's one that's used most common, but there's other types as well. And just like the amount of the commission is negotiable, you can choose a different type of listing that may meet your needs better.
Basically, everything is negotiable in real estate, isn't it?
I would say that's true. Everything's negotiable in real estate.
It's a really good idea to have an attorney helping you through negotiations.
Yeah, you want a representative who understands that it's not always done the same way every time.
Right.
And because if you come under a different category or a different option, you want to know that you qualify for that, and that helps in the negotiation phase. It helps in the entire transaction.
You mentioned the most common type of listing. That would be, I'm guessing, exclusive right to sale.
Correct. Exclusive right to sell. This is by far the most common. It has a beginning and an end period. Sometimes it's for 6 months, sometimes it's for a year, sometimes it's longer than that. And so long listings, unless you have a very difficult or unique piece of property, usually are not in the best interests of the seller, because things can change and they may not want to continue with the same agent for a whole variety of reasons.
Exclusive right to sell basically means you're working with a broker agent, and they're the only ones that you're going to work with to sell that property.
Right, and it doesn't matter who finds the buyer. In other words, if you're at a party and you meet the buyer, you say I have a property to sell,
Yeah.
your agent earns the commission just as if they went out and walked the streets of a certain neighborhood to find a buyer,
Okay.
kind of thing. Or if they paid for advertising, which is more common. It is beneficial in some ways, because a lot of times when a realtor takes a listing, they have some upfront expenses which they don't get reimbursed for unless they find a buyer and the transaction closes.
So what else is there besides exclusive right?
Well, there's an open listing, and that means that the seller can work with more than one agent, and the agent that finds the buyer earns the commission. So, and that means if the seller finds their buyer, they pay no commission. And so it kind of is, this is open to all takers. But then the problem is, many times in the way our market works here in Phoenix, is you have agents that may not be interested in that. They say, oh, it's an open listing, everybody's looking for a buyer for this. But
I'm not going to waste my time on it.
But it's something that you shouldn't ignore, because you may have a buyer that's interested, and you're obligated to show your buyer all listings that are appropriate for them.
Yeah.
And
I can think of another one here very quickly, a FSBO, for sale by owner.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
And what happens with that is, now the rules of ethics for realtors specifically say that you can't put your interests above your client, which means that you can't, let's say, steer them to a property where the commission is higher, or that's better for you as the agent in terms of what kind of commission you're going to earn. But a FSBO is someone who doesn't have an agent. Sometimes they pay a real estate company to put their property on the MLS for a small flat fee. But if you're the buyer's agent and your buyer sees that, you have two choices. Either you negotiate with your client to pay you a fee or a commission,
Okay,
And it doesn't have to be 3%, whatever the two of you negotiate is fine.
right.
Or you can negotiate with the seller to pay your commission. And many sellers in FSBOs will do that if they get the right price. Or the seller and buyer could each pay a portion. So but you don't want to do all the work and not get paid, obviously.
Sure.
You know, you're entitled to get paid for your work, because if I've represented buyers where the seller is a FSBO, and even I end up doing the seller's paperwork and the buyer's paperwork.
Right.
You know what I mean? Because I want it to be done right. And so I explained that to the buyer going in, that it does require more of my time.
And you would think that most for sale by owners would understand that there very well might be a commission that comes into play.
Yes, and I have many clients who have listed their property without a broker, and they usually set aside some money up front in their mind that they may have to pay the buyer's agent. It just depends on how fast they have to sell their property. And a lot of times people don't hire a listing agent because their property was underwater and now they can break even, but not with a big commission.
Good point.
So that's why I see a lot of FSBOs as well.
What other types of listings do we need to be aware of? Very briefly?
Well, there's something called a net listing. This is not used very often, where you say to an agent, I need this bottom line. I need to take home this amount of money from the sale. After the costs are paid, anything you get me over that is yours.
Okay.
And so, you know, that is appropriate in some transactions, but not many.
Okay.
You know, and
We
so
don't see that too often.
the biggest problem is this can create a conflict between the seller and the agent,
Right.
because the seller needs a certain amount, but the agent is looking for more, and they're not on the same page as far as that's concerned.
Sure.
Because they have their interests are a little bit separate in that regard. Now, with the exclusive right to sell, there actually are two types of that type of listing, and that is, you can get a commission if the qualified buyer is found, but then some listing agreements say that the buyer is found and the sale closes. Because many times you have a buyer who may even have cash, qualify for a loan, and the buyer cancels for some reason. And so you want to be specific about under what circumstances are you willing to pay the commission.
The seller needs to be aware of that as well if they're looking at that possibility. You really have to understand not just about the sale of the property, but the type of listing, what that means, the relationship between your real estate agent and also all the other negotiations that go on beyond that. It really is a complicated process.
Well, plus the listing agreement has kind of a long arm, meaning that even after it's canceled or expires, if a buyer that has seen the property during the listing comes back to buy, there could be commission earned. So you want to understand all the nuances, and you and I talk about that a lot.
Absolutely. The details.
The
You got to get the
details.
details right.
Yes.
Yeah, Laura Bramnick can help with the details. The devil is in the detail, but Laura can be your angel in the fine print.
Perfectly said, Sinclair. Thank you.
480-624-2705, 480-624-2705, and the website talkrealestateaz.com. All the contact info is there, talkrealestateaz.com. Thank you, Laura.
Thanks, Sinclair.